For the longest time, I never thought about it. During the war, you don't. You can't. They were the enemy, and that was the beginning and the end of the thought. It was a simple equation of survival. It's him or me, and my training, my instinct, everything in me was screaming to make sure it was him. You see a man in a Japanese uniform and you pull the trigger. You don't think about his name or his family or where he came from. You just see the threat. So for years, I never thought about it. Not really. But then, decades later, when the world is quiet and you're alone with your memories, it comes back. It started to bother me, this one thought that just wouldn't leave. I took the life of, I'd estimate, probably 12 to 20 men, somewhere in that range. I can't be certain, but I know it was more than a few. And the thing that got me, the thing that still gets me, wasn't the act itself. In war, that's what you do. It was what I took from them. These guys, they never had a chance to reproduce. They never got to have children, to see their family line continue. And that bothered me more than anything else. I truly believe the ability to continue our human race is probably the most important single thing that any human being can do. It's the one true piece of immortality we get, to pass on our life to another. And we all know what that is, that deep, fundamental drive. These guys, these young men, they were denied that. I denied them that. I've thought of it in that vein for so many years now. They were just young men, like you, like I was, full of life one minute, and then gone. Because of me. That's a heavy thing to carry. It was a landscape of death. I've seen a lot of dead Japanese soldiers. I mean, they were everywhere. Just wherever they fell, they were expired. It's a strange thing to see. After a while, you almost get used to it, which is a terrible thing to admit. But the worst part, the absolute worst thing that you probably have never smelled, and I hope you never do, is a decaying human body. The stench, it's tremendous. It's terrible. It gets into your clothes, into your throat, and you can't get it out. It's a sweet, sick smell that clings to everything. And it was everywhere on Okinawa. It wasn't uncommon at all. You get around a cave that had been hit with a flamethrower or a satchel charge, and you could smell these guys that had been killed sometime prior. Days, maybe weeks. God knows what reason they were still there. The sun, the humidity on that island. It obviously decayed the body much quicker, and it was a terrible, terrible experience just to breathe the air. You'd be on patrol, moving through the rubble of a village, and the smell would just hit you like a wall. We knew what it meant. There were a lot of skeletons, too, picked clean by the elements and the critters. It's an image you don't forget. A human being reduced to bone and rags. You see that, and you smell that, day after day, and it changes you. It makes you realize how fragile it all is. You did what you had to do to survive, not just the bullets, but the environment, the horror of it all. When we'd shoot somebody, when we were in a firefight and men went down, you couldn't just leave them there. Not because of any ceremony, not at that point. It was purely practical. There were shell holes all over the place, from the mortars, from the artillery, from the Navy shelling. God knows what kind of craters littered the ground. They were everywhere. So we'd throw their bodies in a shell hole. We'd just drag them over and roll them in. Then we'd take a couple of shovels full of dirt and throw it on top of them, just enough to cover them. It wasn't a burial. It wasn't about respect. It was just so they wouldn't stink, so that we wouldn't have to live with that smell any more than we already were. It sounds cold, I know, but that's what it came down to. You're living in mud and filth, you're exhausted, you're terrified, and you're trying to hold on to some small piece of your sanity. And getting rid of that smell was part of it. It could be one of them. It could be one of my own men. But that's what we did. You just became numb to it. You did the job, you covered them with dirt, and you moved on to the next ridge, the next town, the next fight. You had to. If you stopped to think about it, really think about what you were doing, you'd never be able to function again. We left for Guam. That was a different experience altogether. That's a day that I will never, ever forget as long as I live. I think the name of the ship was the George F. Elliott. It's written down in a booklet I have somewhere. But the name doesn't really matter. What matters is what happened next. We had been at sea, and you know something big is coming. You can feel it in the air. The whole ocean, the whole horizon, was just filled with American steel. I mean, there are ships all over the place. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers, God knows what else, just covering the water as far as you could see in any direction. It was the most powerful thing I had ever seen, and I was just a tiny little piece of it. Then the show started. The big ships opened up, firing on the island. The sound is something you can't imagine. It's not just a boom. You feel it in your bones, in your teeth. And then you see the planes come in, our planes, flying over, dropping. Bombs. The whole island looked like it was on fire. And right in the middle of all of that, here come the Japanese Zeros, the kamikazes. We saw them, little planes, diving right out of the sky, straight for our ships. And then just boom, a fireball, an explosion. You'd see a plume of black smoke go up from a destroyer or a cruiser. It was organized chaos. Rockets, bombs, anti-aircraft fire. Everything is going off at once. What an experience. It was terrifying and awe-inspiring all at the same time. We had to go down the ropes, down the side of the big transport ship. You're loaded with all your gear, your rifle, your pack, ammunition, grenades, everything. It's heavy, and you're just praying you don't slip and fall into the water between the ships, because if you do, you're gone. You'd sink like a stone. You get on board the landing craft, the Higgins boat, and they pack you in there shoulder to shoulder. You can't move. You're just standing there, looking at the other fellas. Most of them are just kids, 18, 19 years old. You see the fear in their eyes, but nobody says anything. You just hold your rifle and watch the island get closer. The noise is deafening. Shells are flying over our heads toward the beach, and you can hear the chatter of machine guns starting to open up from the shore. You can smell the diesel fumes from the boat's engine mixed with the salt water and the smoke from the explosions. It's a smell you never forget. I'm standing there, talking to some guy next to me. I have no idea who he was. We were just making small talk, probably about home. About anything to keep our minds off what was about to happen. You're trying to act brave, but your stomach is in knots. You just want it to be over. The front of the landing craft, the ramp, it drops down with a big slam, and that's the signal. Go. There's no thinking, just doing. The guy I was talking to and I, we jump off at the same time. We landed in water, maybe knee-deep, maybe up to your thigh a little bit. It was warm, but you don't notice. You're just focused on the sand. I took a few steps, churning through the water, and then I looked over for him. I just looked over, and there he is, laying in the water, face down. He was gone, just like that. 1 second he was a living, breathing person, and the next second he was just laying there. A bullet must have gotten him the instant he left the boat. I looked at him, and my mind just went blank for a second. But you can't stop. You can't help him. You can't do anything. I had to keep on going. We were probably, I don't know, maybe 50 feet off the shoreline. You have to get out of the water. That's the kill. Zone. So I ran, we all ran, through the water and up onto the sand. Everybody else is coming up. Everyone is going, yelling. NCOs shouting orders you can barely hear over the noise. It's complete and utter chaos. So we get up on the beach, and right at the edge of the sand, there's what they call a hummock. It's where the jungle begins. Just a wall of trees and bushes and vines. so thick and dense you can't see through it. I get up there and I'm looking at this hummock, and I can't get through it. It's like a solid green wall. And all around me, everybody's running all over the place, trying to find a way in, trying to find some cover from the machine guns that are firing down the beach. So I turned, and I just started running down the beach, parallel to the water. I don't know how far I ran. Maybe 25, 30, 50 feet, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I was just running, looking for a break in the vegetation, a place to get through. And all of a sudden, a voice. It was loud, and it was clear, and it was right in my head. It just said one word, stop. That's all it said, stop. And it wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. And I stopped. I froze right in my tracks. And as I did, I looked down at the sand in front of me, and I saw them, bullets, hitting the sand, kicking up little puffs, right where I would have been. A machine gun had opened up on me from somewhere, and the bullets were walking right towards me. If I had taken another step, just one more step forward, I wouldn't be here today. I would have been cut in half. I just stood there for a second, my heart pounding in my chest, and I said, "Thank you, God." I said it out loud. Then I turned and I scrambled back up to that hummock, that wall of green, and I dove behind it. I just sat down in the sand, with my back against the jungle, and I prayed. I just closed my eyes for a few seconds amidst all that hell, and I gave thanks. It taught me one thing right there on that beach. It taught me that there's a God. There was no other explanation for it. It wasn't my training, it wasn't luck, it was something else, something watching over me. After a moment, I got myself together. I turned around, looked along the hummock again, and I finally found a place I could push my way through. I got up, and I went on with our assault. You had to. The battle was still going on. But that moment changed me. It gave me a sense of peace in a strange way. It made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I was going to make it through all this. From there, we fought our way across Guam. And after that, after we secured it, we got our orders for the next one, and we landed on Okinawa. After Guam, you expect all hell to break loose the second the ramp drops. But Okinawa, it was different. It was quiet, too quiet. We landed on April 1st, April Fool's Day of all things. We were part of the 6th Marine Division, and our objective was an airfield they called Yantan. I remember coming in on the Higgins boats, and you're just coiled up like a spring, waiting for the machine guns to start chattering, for the mortars to start falling. Your knuckles are white on your rifle. And then the ramp drops. We splash into the water and nothing. Just the sound of us wading ashore. It was the strangest feeling in the world. We got onto the beach, secured the airfield in just a few hours, and there was nobody there, not a soul. It felt like we'd been invited to a party and the hosts had forgotten to show up. We all looked at each other, thinking, is this a trap? Where are they? It was an eerie, unsettling feeling. We knew they were there somewhere. An entire army doesn't just vanish. We learned later that the Japanese general, Ushijima, had pulled all his men south. He let us walk right in. He was saving his strength, drawing us into a meat grinder he'd prepared. That quiet morning was just the deep breath before the scream. We started moving inland, maybe a mile, 2 miles, and that's when the quiet stopped. We found the real Okinawa. It wasn't just beaches and airfields. It was a maze of steep hills, little villages, and rice paddies, and the tombs. I'll never forget the tombs. They were everywhere, built into the sides of the hills. They looked like little stone houses for the dead, shaped like a horseshoe or a turtle's back. They called them haka. To us, they were just fortifications. The Japanese were masters of defense, and they'd turned every one of those family tombs into a machine gun nest or a mortar position. We'd be moving up a ridge, thinking it was clear, and suddenly one of those tombs would open up on us. You'd have to crawl on your belly through the mud, trying to get a grenade in the opening. It was slow, awful work. You were fighting their ancestors, it felt like. And the rice paddies, they were a nightmare. You're sinking in mud up to your knees, sometimes your waist. You can't run, you can't dig in properly. And the Japanese would be on the high ground, just waiting for you to get stuck. They'd have everything sighted in. We lost a lot of good men just trying to cross 100 yards of open paddy. That's when we first started running into real resistance. A sniper here, a machine gun there. It started small, but it grew every day, with every hill we had to take. The island itself was fighting us. That was the hardest part, harder than the soldiers in some ways. The island was full of them, old men, women, children, just trying to survive in the middle of this hell. The Japanese had told them terrible things about us, that we were monsters, that we would torture and kill them. So they were terrified. They would run from us. They'd hide in the same caves and tombs the soldiers were using. And in the chaos of a firefight, in the smoke and the noise, you have a split second to decide if that figure running from a bush is a soldier with a grenade or a mother with her baby. You make a mistake, and you have to live with it for the rest of your life. I remember one time we were clearing a small village, just a few huts. We were taking fire from a ridge line above it. We were moving fast, trying to get to cover. And this woman, she ran out from behind one of the huts. She was running across a small open area, right towards the Japanese lines. In my mind, she was running to warn them, or maybe she was carrying something. You don't think, you just react. My training took over. I raised my rifle, and I shot her. She just fell. And after the firefight was over, we went up there. She was just a woman, a civilian. She wasn't carrying a weapon, she wasn't a threat. She was just scared, running away from the noise, running from us. I killed her, for nothing. I don't know if she had a family, children. I just know she was running, and I took her life. That's a different kind of wound. It's not one that bleeds. It's one you carry inside you. Forever. Oh God, the rain. In May, the rains came. They called it the plum rains, but there was nothing sweet about it. It was a monsoon. It didn't just rain, it poured. For weeks, it felt like. The whole world turned to mud. It wasn't just dirt and water. It was a thick, sticky, red clay soup mixed with everything else. Debris, shell casings, rations, and bodies. The mud was ankle deep, then knee deep. It filled our foxholes, so you were sleeping in a cold, watery grave. It made the roads impassable, so the tanks and supply trucks got bogged down. We were short on food, short on ammunition, and always, always wet. Your boots would rot right off your feet. We had guys getting trench foot so bad they couldn't walk. Your skin would get wrinkled and pale like you'd been in a bathtub for a month. And the smell, the rain and the mud couldn't wash away the smell of death. It just mixed with it, made it hang heavier in the air. Everything was miserable. Your rifle would get clogged with mud. You'd have to clean it constantly or it wouldn't fire when you needed it most. Trying to move a wounded man was a Herculean task. It would take 4 or 5 guys to carry one stretcher, slipping and sliding, sinking in the muck while the shells were still coming down. That mud, it didn't just slow us down. It tried to break our spirit. It added a whole other layer of misery onto the fighting. You weren't just fighting the Japanese, you were fighting the island itself. And the island was trying to swallow you whole. It was a false start. That quiet landing at Yantan, that was a trick. The Japanese general, Ushijima, he was smart. He let us walk right in. He let us take the north of the island and feel good about ourselves. He pulled all his best troops, his most fanatic men, south. He packed them into a fortress of hills and caves and ridges. We called it the Shuri line. It wasn't a line, it was a cancer. a maze of death that was dug into the very bones of Okinawa. When we finally moved south and hit that line, the war started. The real war. It was like running full speed into a solid steel wall. One minute you're walking through a field, the next, the entire world erupts. Machine guns open up from holes in the ground you can't even see. Mortars start falling like rain. They had these big guns, artillery hidden so deep in the hills we couldn't find them for weeks. They had them zeroed in on every road, every clearing. You couldn't move without awing fire. We quickly learned that the war wouldn't be won by grand charges. It would be won by inches. By one man, then another, crawling through mud and gore to take out a single machine gun nest. That's how we advanced. One dead Japanese soldier at a time. And for every one of them, it felt like we lost one of our own. The noise. I can't explain the noise. It wasn't just loud, it was physical. It shook your teeth, it rattled your soul. It never, ever stopped. Day and night, the shelling, the rifle fire, the screaming. They called it the Typhoon of Steel, and that's exactly what it was. A storm that wasn't made of wind and water, but of hot, jagged metal that was designed for one purpose, to tear you to pieces. Close quarters, that was our life for 2 months. After we broke through the main defenses, we had to take the capital city, Naha. It wasn't a city anymore. Our own Navy had shelled it into a pile of broken concrete and twisted steel. It was a ghost town, but the ghosts were armed and waiting for us. Every pile of rubble could hide a sniper. Every shattered building was a machine gun nest. You'd fight for a whole day, losing good men, just to take one city block. You'd clear a house, room by room, your heart pounding in your throat, expecting a Japanese soldier to jump out of a closet with a bayonet at any second. And they did. They were masters of hiding. They had tunnels connecting the basements of buildings. We'd clear a house, think it was secure, and then get shot in the back by men who came up from a hole in the floor. That's where most of it happened for me, the killing I have to live with. It wasn't from a distance. It was 10 feet away, 15 feet. You saw their faces. They were just kids, most of them. Young men like me, terrified but filled with this absolute refusal to surrender. They believed their emperor was a god. They believed it was the highest honor to die for him, so they never gave up. You'd wound a man and he'd try to pull the pin on a grenade and take you with him. They'd do these banzai charges at night. You'd be in your foxhole, half asleep, and suddenly you'd hear the screaming. Hundreds of them, running right at your lines with bayonets and swords. It was pure madness. You just had to fire into the dark and pray you got them before they got to you. The worst part was the caves. The whole island was honeycombed with them. They'd fight from the mouth of a cave until we couldn't get close, and then we'd have to bring up the flamethrowers. I will never forget that smell. It's the smell of hell itself. You do what you have to do to stay alive, to keep your buddies alive. You become an animal. You stop thinking, you just react. Kill or be killed. There is no other choice. And in those moments, you see the man you have to shoot, and you see he's just a boy, and you pull the trigger anyway. Because if you don't, your life is over. That's a memory that doesn't fade with time. It just gets clearer. You don't. A part of you breaks. You just learn to operate with the broken pieces. The strain was total. It wasn't just the enemy, it was the island itself. Around the middle of May, the rains started, the monsoons. They called it the plum rains. It wasn't a shower. It was a deluge that did not stop for weeks. The entire world turned to mud. It was a thick, yellow, clinging mud that was mixed with blood and God knows what else. It was up to your knees, sometimes your waist. Our tanks got stuck. Our supply trucks couldn't move. We were constantly wet, constantly cold, even in the Pacific. Your boots would rot on your feet. We got trench foot, dysentery, fevers. You'd dig a foxhole for cover, and by morning it would be filled with a foot of water. You'd sleep sitting up in that filth, shivering, with your rifle in your arms to keep it out of the mud. You're exhausted, you're sick, you're scared, and you still have to fight. You saw your friends die. One minute you're sharing a can of rations with a guy from Ohio, talking about his girl back home, and the next minute a mortar shell lands and he's just gone. There's nothing left to bury. You see that enough times, you go numb. You build a wall inside yourself because if you let the fear and the grief in, it will paralyze you. You can't afford to feel. You just have to focus on the next step, the next breath, the next enemy soldier. We lost thousands of men on that island. The casualty reports were staggering. I remember thinking, how can we keep losing this many men and still be winning? It felt like we were all just being fed into a giant meat grinder. You survived by luck and by the grace of God, nothing else. Yes. And that was the deepest tragedy of the whole affair. They were caught in the middle of this nightmare. They were simple farmers, fishermen. They had no part in this war, but their home became the battlefield. We'd find them hiding in caves and in the tombs they built into the hillsides. They were terrified of us because the Japanese soldiers had told them we were white devils, that we would torture and kill them. We'd try to give them food or water, and they would shrink away. We saw whole families who had taken their own lives because they believed it was better than being captured by us. It was heartbreaking. The Japanese army was brutal to them. They stole their food, used them as human shields, and even forced young Okinawan boys to fight with them, giving them bamboo spears against our rifles. I saw women and children running through the crossfire, screaming. You didn't know who was who. Was that a civilian or a soldier in disguise? It was chaos. I told you, I shot a woman. I live with that. She was running, and in the heat of the moment you make a split-second decision. You can't take it back. Seeing the civilians, the old people, the little children with their eyes wide with terror, it just drove home the absolute horror of it all. They lost everything, their homes, their families, their way of life. We were there to liberate the island, but to do it, we had to help destroy it first. There's no victory in that. There's just a profound sadness for all the innocent life that was swept away in the Typhoon of steel. It wasn't just a battle between armies, it was the destruction of a world. Change me? Oh, son, it becomes a part of you. It's like a layer of skin you can never shed. When I came home, I tried to be the same boy who left, but that boy was gone. He was buried somewhere in the mud of Okinawa, next to all those other boys. I tried to just get on with it, get a job, get married, have a family. And I did. I have a wonderful family, children, grandchildren. I've been blessed with a long life, but the war is always there. It's not in a loud way, not like in the movies with explosions and screaming every night. It's quiet. It's in the silence that it gets you. I'd be sitting at the dinner table watching my children laugh, and a thought would just drift into my head. A face, a sound, the smell. That smell. I told you about the smell of a decaying body. You never forget that. It can ruin a good meal, I'll tell you that. For years, I never talked about it. Not to my wife, not to anyone. It was a box I kept locked. But the contents, they seep out. The biggest change, the biggest thing that haunts me, is what I told you before. Those men. The 12, maybe 20 of them. In the heat of it, you don't think. You're a machine. Your training takes over. It's him or you. It's him or your buddy next to you. The choice is simple. But later, decades later, when you're an old man and you've held your own child in your arms, you realize what you took. You took someone's son, someone's potential husband. You took a father that would never be. You ended a whole line of people that would have existed if not for a single moment, a single pull of a trigger. That thought, that is a heavy, heavy stone to carry for 80 years. I've prayed on it. I've made my peace with God, I think. I had to. I believe he understands that we were put in a situation that no man should ever be in. But understanding it and living with it are two different things. It changed my appreciation for life itself, for the simple, profound act of breathing, of seeing another sunrise, because I saw so many who didn't get that chance. It made me grateful, but it's a gratitude that's always tinged with a deep, deep sorrow. The cost, you can read the numbers in a history book, but you can't feel them. The books say we lost over 12,000 Americans killed, Marines and Army soldiers, and nearly 5,000 sailors in the fleet from those kamikazes. That's a small city of young men wiped out on one island. And for every one killed, 3 or 4 were wounded, horribly. Men who came home without legs, without arms, with faces you couldn't recognize. Men who came home with minds that were shattered into a million pieces. That's the American cost. But that's not the whole story. The Japanese, we were told they lost over 100,000 soldiers. 100,000. They fought to the last man. It was a brutal, terrible thing. We'd clear out a cave and they'd just keep coming. Teenagers, some of them. They were just as scared as we were, I'm sure of it. But they had their orders. No surrender. So we had no choice. It was kill or be killed. There was no room for mercy when a man was running at you with a bayonet or a grenade. You see, the cost was our innocence. It was the part of our soul that believes in the goodness of man. War burns that right out of you. And the worst part, the part that people forget, was the civilians, the Okinawans. They were caught in the middle of this typhoon of steel, as they called it. We were tearing their home apart, their fields, their villages, their lives. Tens of thousands of them died. I don't know the exact number, but it was a tragedy beyond words. We'd see them, families hiding in tombs, starving. Sometimes they were forced to fight by the Japanese. You never knew. It was chaos. So when you ask the cost, it was a generation. It was the humanity of everyone involved. We won the island, and we helped win the war. But the price was so high, it's almost impossible to comprehend. It was paid in blood and tears and ghosts. Ghosts that I'm sure still walk those hills today. My message? I suppose it's simple. Remember. Just remember. Don't let us be forgotten. Don't let what we did become just a paragraph in a textbook. Understand that the world you live in, this incredible world of peace and prosperity, with your cell phones and your easy lives, it was bought and paid for. It was paid for by boys who were 18, 19 years old, lying in freezing, muddy foxholes, thousands of miles from home. They weren't heroes from a comic book. They were farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Detroit, kids from Brooklyn. They were scared. They were hungry. They cried for their mothers at night. But when the time came, they stood up. They did their duty. They fought for the man next to them. That's what it came down to in the end. You weren't fighting for the flag or for some grand idea. You were fighting to keep your buddy alive, and he was fighting to keep you alive. That's the bond. That's the only thing that got us through. So I ask young people, be grateful. When you wake up in a warm bed, be grateful. When you sit down to a meal with your family, be be grateful. When you have the freedom to choose your own path in life, to love who you want to love, to say what you want to say, be grateful. Because those simple things were the dreams we held on to in the darkest moments. We dreamed of a hot meal. We dreamed of seeing our sweethearts again. We dreamed of just being safe. So many of my friends never got to live those dreams. I did. I got to live a full life. And I feel like I've had to live it for them too, to make it count, to honor their sacrifice. And please understand that war is not a glorious thing. It is the ugliest, most wasteful, most vile thing man has ever invented. It is a failure of humanity. My greatest hope is that your generation and the ones that come after you will be smart enough and compassionate enough to find a better way to solve your problems. Because the price of war, I've seen it, and I pray to God you never have to. Remember us. That's all I ask. Remember what we sacrificed for you.